All right. Well, we just hit 3. We've got a handful of folks here in the chat, so might as well get started. Welcome to yet another round of KeeperDAO town halls. Uh, Today, we have a few KIP drafts that have been posted and discussed around here. We've made a few announcements around ones as well. So I think for today, I'd like to have on the agenda to get through at least 2 of them that have been discussed. But the first one I think is really exciting. That has to do with our recent announcement with B protocol, and providing kind of like a liquidation backstop for them, and kind of seeding their BAMMs. And so I'd actually love to have Hazard hop on the stage here with me. Let him kind of just quickly reintroduce the draft and the idea to folks, and then we can open it up to any questions or comments on it as well. So Hazard, if you're around, I'd love for you to hop up on stage.
Hey, everybody.
I can hear you loud and clear. If you want to go on ahead and just hop into it.
Yeah, so the KIP in question is this draft to allocate 5 million from the DAO Treasury to act as something called a traveling liquidation backstop, whatever that means. Can't explain. There's a parallel governance proposal on B protocol's forums, which is to sort of allow the functionality that we are going to use to augment the BAMM. So they need to enable that, or go, wave that ahead. And on our end, the decision for governance is mostly about the use of funds here. So I guess, I don't know, how should I go through this? Essentially, I think maybe folks have read the blog post and kind of understand the basics of this integration and what it looks like. We would get priority on medium and small liquidations on any protocol, so protocol-wide liquidations. So rather than hiding vaults which deal with individual borrowers' liquidations, right? Here, for example, all of MakerDAO's CDP vaults that support the BAMM or are backstopped by them, all of their liquidation flow would end up in this marketplace, where we would then have priority to rebalance, so conduct the arbitrage itself, and hence profit from that. And so this is obviously very advantageous to us because this is essentially built-in source of transaction flow for the coordination game, right? So we're basically extending the hiding game to B protocol BAMMs using a special fee lane, and that will only be available for white-listed keepers, so keepers that were participating with KeeperDAO. And so as B protocol extends the use of this BAMM to protocols, all of those protocols flow for liquidations, or the majority of sort of the profitable sort of baseline liquidation flow that happens all the time will kind of automatically be in that sense routed through the coordination game, in the sense that it will be only available to our keepers for a period of time. The reason that large liquidations are not part of this is because the system needs to so today the system needs to sort of decay, sort of fail safe. So fail into a state where immediate action can be taken. So if we, for example, restricted it only to us for large liquidations as well, it would mean that even when the market is extremely imbalanced, which would usually indicate that there is nobody arbitraging away this imbalance, right? That we would still only be the only ones to do it. But if it's super imbalanced, it should mean that we're not doing it, even though we should be. So for that reason, it's sort of, there's a threshold above which it becomes available to the open market. But below that threshold within this operating regime, it will be available to us with with priority. And we may adjust that threshold as we go to kind of determine what the risks and what everything are. So it's very advantageous for us because this integration basically means that where this BAMM exists, any protocol that has it, all of that protocol's liquidation flow, all meaning most of the small and medium-sized liquidation flow, which is most of it in general, especially the profit, all of the profit from that and stuff, will flow through the coordination game. So, standard thing, 80% of that will be rebated to their liquidity providers on the BAMM, and 20% of that will be essentially revenue for the DAO that we'll split up however we decide to split it up with between burning and sending to stakers or sending to treasury through governance. I think that's clear, right? That's the advantages are clear of why we would want this, right? So the next question is, well, how do we've agreed that we want to do this, so then it's in our interest to make sure that, for example, if they're integrating it with Maker, or they're pitching it to MakerDAO, that they can make that sale, because we want MakerDAO's liquidation flow, right? And it will help MakerDAO. I mean, we're not stealing it. It's something that will be helpful for them. But we would like it to come through the coordination game, or if they're doing it with any protocol, Aave or anything. So to make this more enticing, we have sort of high service level understandings. This is part of why we have such high level research partners and everything. All of our fancy pants keepers and MEV experts. But another important aspect for making sure that protocols are comfortable doing this is liquidity. They need to have liquidity. This is the key problem with liquidations, is that there needs to be liquidity sitting around ready to buy collateral at a moment's notice. And this is what the protocols will look at and say, okay, we can liquidate up to, however much liquidity we have in our backstop. We can liquidate that much collateral. So this is the key problem that B protocol is solving with this BAMM design, which you can read more about if you look at the governance post. And it's essentially it only uses deposited collateral when it's time to grab, or the deposited liquidity from LPs. It only uses it when it's time to liquidate something. So when it automatically buys collateral and makes the liquidation happen, that's when the capital it's deposited is being sort of used, and then that capital is used for rebalancing, and then it gets shoved back into where it started, which was some yield-bearing account of some kind. So depositors will receive yield to make their assets, the deposited assets, productive, to kind of make it worth their while to leave their capital in this backstop device. And then when it's time to liquidate, that capital will come out of the yield-bearing account, purchase the collateral, and deposit that collateral into this special BAMM market that we can then arbitrage. So why this $5 million? It's essentially to tell somebody like MakerDAO or whoever that on day one of this integration, when you turn on the switch, well, you have to, where's the capital coming from? The backstop has to kind of saturate with liquidity before you can be sure that you're saying, okay, there's enough capital here to liquidate a certain amount of collateral, so that we, the DAO, the MakerDAO, we feel safe that this is backstopping us appropriately. So what this amount of money does is it does two things. The first thing is it lets us to be sort of the first depositors in these markets to say, look, today, day one, flip the switch. Here's $5 million already of liquidity in that market. This market's protected up to $5 million right now. And this liquidity would be yield bearing, just as it would be for any depositor, right? So it's not sort of idle, and it's also not being spent out. We're not spending 5 million. We're just sort of, it's ours. We're acting as a depositor in a particular, it's in sort of agreement to act as the first depositor in these pools, in a new pool. And this makes it easier for MakerDAO because they know that there's going to be at least, $5 million of liquidity at the start that's going to be there for them, gives them more assurance. And it also kind of gives other depositors more assurance that, like, look, it's safe to join this pool, use this technology, earn some yield. The second function that it serves is sort of putting our skin in the game, in the sense that this is our liquidity in this market. And so our keepers, this service we're providing, is incentivized to be very efficient with rebalancing this market. So taking these arbitrages and doing what we say we're going to do, which is that we're going to make these rebalances more efficient, which will make things more capital efficient for the LPs, making these pools, these backstops more enticing. So we have more liquidity and everything runs better. So that's the second thing. It's sort of it's our money, it's our pledge that, yes, we're going to be operating these pools according to the agreement, to the arrangement. Otherwise, our capital would be at risk as well. So those are sort of the two reasons why this was sort of structured in this way, can help, and that doing these two things helps us convince protocols, or helps B protocol convince other protocols to accept these backstops. The reason it's called traveling is because once MakerDAO's backstops are saturated, maybe we pull up liquidity and go, and we're ready to use it on the next big integration and say, here we are again. And the yield we earn, 10% or whatever yield we've earned so far, that goes back to the treasury or whatever. So that's the idea. That's why it's called traveling. So this is sort of it's a mechanism that allows us to allow B protocol to make these sales better, so that we increase our catchment area more efficiently and thereby gain more of the this transaction flow. There was great questions asked in the governance forum about like when is it saturated, or maybe it was actually in the Discord. I think a user Stubbs maybe. When is it enough? When can we withdraw it? What are some sort of parameters for this? I think that's great. I don't know. This is sort of not at that level yet. I think it's maybe case by case, but I think we should have some. And maybe that's something that we can edit this KIP with, add some basics. I'd be curious what other people think as well. And there's also some questions about where do we get this liquidity from? I think those are also good questions. So yeah, if you want to talk about those, we should chat about them, right? Since we're here.
Yep. Yeah. So does anyone have any questions for Hazard, or thoughts on this, or voices of support for this? To me personally, just getting back on my soapbox, I think this is great. I think it's a great use of treasury funds that are going to lead to more order flow, lead to more coordination. And it's I think that they're a good team to work with as well. So I'm excited for it. But does anyone have any thoughts or comments on this? Peso, coming on up. Here you go, bud.
I just want to voice my support. That is all. I support it, That's all good. Oh, I guess one thing. People are like, let's sell our Bitcoin and then use that as, instead of going straight to stables, sell our Bitcoin for stables. Let's talk about that maybe. That's an idea. I kind of am a fan of having market exposure to Bitcoin short term, at least. Bearish long term on Bitcoin, but short term it's oversold. Maybe it'll bounce, make the treasury number go up. Not that token price is correlated to the treasury, but still, that's something. Also, it makes our treasury more diverse by having stables and Bitcoin, as opposed to sort of nuking our Bitcoin and sort of having it exclusively in USD. So that's just, a thought. I don't know. Maybe we can sell half our Bitcoin and go stables, and then, we still have a little bit of Bitcoin in the treasury. But overall, I support it, whichever direction we go for. That is all.
Yeah, thanks, Peso. I mean, I think that's an interesting thought. Crypto Priest, I was going to call you up if you still got something. What I was going to say on that is that it's not like this liquidity is going to be permanently locked in B protocol. If I understand this right, we'll be able to shift it and move it around between their pools for the backstop, and it will continue to generate, I believe, a solid APY for us as well. So it is still going to be like a productive use of stable coins. I guess you could always go try and dig for higher APYs in other places. But it would be interesting to see if, maybe there's another use for that RIN Bitcoin instead of just liquidating it as well. But that's just my thoughts. Priest, why don't you go on ahead?
Yeah, sorry, just to quickly jump in. I missed the first half of the call. I just kind of jumped in and heard Peso talking about selling Bitcoin. What was that in reference to?
Oh, so Hazard just did a solid overview of the B protocol proposal, where we're going to provide 5 million as a liquidation backstop. Right? And so he was talking about funding that with Bitcoin.
Oh, okay. Do we not have enough stables in the treasury to fund that with the current assets?
We do.
Okay, yeah. In that case, I would be rather strongly against selling Bitcoin at the moment after a 15-20% candle.
It's a good point. I'm not a good enough trader to comment on that though. So, yeah, appreciate that. Yeah. Scamder, I'm calling you up here.
So also just one quick question regarding a previous KIP. I'm not even sure if it made it to KIP. Previous forum vote or discussion on buybacks. Has that advanced at all? And are we still considering that now that we're trading below Treasury NAV? Because I think if we're trading 10-20% below our Treasury value, so I think if we ever gonna do a buyback, now would probably be a decent time.
Yeah, why don't we circle back to that after we've kind of closed the loop on the B protocol conversation, because I did have that in my queue to talk about.
Great, thank you.
Yep. Scamder, you got a thought here?
Yeah, I just wanted to know, is there going to be some sort of, I wouldn't say some sort of problem, but overlapping interests with our own just-in-time underwriting and B protocol's services that they offer? Just a question for Hazard.
Yeah, this is a really interesting question that, because prior to B protocol and us, and this is commented on in some of the blog posts, we're sort of saw each other as competitors. And so in terms of the impact that this would have on our current just-in-time underwriting for hiding vaults. So again, what I said, hiding vaults is sort of intended to be a product that's best suited for individual borrowers. So you as an individual borrower using a decentralized lending protocol can be backstopped in your particular position. What it is sort of not maybe as well suited for is sort of backstopping of an entire protocol or of an entire sort of protocol, product like a CDP vault on MakerDAO or something like that. And that's where the B protocol AMM product is actually ideal. And as I commented on their governance forum, it's sort of elegant in that it sort of separates concerns where all of the work of doing integrations with lending protocols, getting the liquidity that you need to do the backstop, incentivizing that liquidity, and actually making sure that all the liquidation calls go through and everything. I mean, so for example, MakerDAO, the governance process is 6 months if you're lucky to get something deployed. Doing all of that is sort of what B protocol are experts at. They're experts at looking at that, thinking about that. What we really care about is the act of protecting the resulting liquidation arbitrage from MEV, securing that MEV, and then making that happen efficiently. And so the BAMM is a great, cool thing because it kind of lets them handle all of that stuff that I said that they're good at, and then kind of lets us handle all the stuff that we're good at. It's like an ideal little piece that sort of converts one problem into another and lets us kind of work on either side of it to make a better product overall. So it won't affect in the short term our hiding vault product, which is, again, it's more tailored towards individual borrowers than this BAMM, which is more about like protocol level, backstopping. However, the question of like where do hiding vaults fit into the long-term strategy is sort of a bigger one, I would say. But in the short term, it's not this isn't a competing arrangement or anything like that. Yeah.
Thanks, Gamder. Priest, you had another thing to add?
As a quick question regarding the integration. I believe on the post it says it's only going to be intended for small to medium-sized liquidations. And I was wondering how is B Protocol currently routing their large-scale liquidations, and is there ever like do we have a planned partnership for a full integration where we handle all of the liquidations through KeeperDAO or the coordination game?
There's no firm plans or anything. I think what this is, so this partnership sort of requires mutual trust to grow because, like I said, we've been competitors in the past. So we're starting small and saying, let's do medium and small size liquidations below a particular threshold. So we've modified the pricing curve on the AMM, this BAMM, so that below a certain threshold, the fees required to swap are going to be lower for us, much lower than it would be for folks who are not part of this whitelist, right? So below that threshold, we're in a fee regime where we have a priority built in. And then above that threshold, where the market has become more imbalanced for whatever reason, that fee regime no longer holds. And so it's sort of available, everybody's on an equal plane.
That makes sense. Thank you. Just a quick question regarding that. I'm not obviously that has to do a little bit more of the mechanics of the coordination game, and we currently do not know that. But do KeeperDAO keepers then have the ability to also rein in on the open market for large scale liquidations, or would that be a gated? Like, would they be able to also fulfill those?
Yeah, I mean, if they just competed, they just have to compete in the wild for everything. Yeah. So it wouldn't really, it wouldn't behoove them to go through the coordination game because it wouldn't be, so there's like 3 stages. First, you need to hide the MEV and then you can coordinate it. So since it's not hidden, like they could do coordination game stuff on it, but they might be losing out twice. Like they would do the coordinator auction and then they would also need to deal with maybe a gas auction or paying to block producers because they have to compete in the wild, right? So they would probably do that outside the coordination game. They could still do it, but that arbitrage profit wouldn't be internalized, right, to us or to anybody. Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, obviously, over time, the idea would be that we build this trust, we build this relationship, we have a bunch of great numbers, and we march that threshold up. But then again, it's also a risk question. Of like, we need to be able to fail safe. They need to be able to fail safe and to give that commitment to these lending protocols that in the event that, I don't know, every keeper in the world stops working at the same time, that those protocols can still offload risks and it won't harm these depositors in the BAMM. The market won't just go to shit. Yeah.
But that's currently like kind of built in because we only get an advantage on a fee size. So like, if it gets large enough, even if keepers fail, there would still be an incentive for external people to jump in.
Correct.
Even for small to medium sized, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, great question. All right, does anyone else have anything on? Oh, nothing to one. I'm going to call you up right here. Should be able to accept that invitation to speak there. Nothing to one. There we go. Go right ahead. Unmute.
Oh, thank you. Just a quick question. So my understanding is, well, this liquidity isn't in use. It's being placed somewhere where it can generate a yield. And presumably there's some cost associated with taking it out of wherever it is generating a yield and putting it to use as a liquidity backstop it's intended to be. So I guess there's a couple questions. One would be, who bears the cost of the removing it from wherever it's generating a yield? And the second question would be, where would this liquidity be placed to generate a yield, and like on what basis is this are these places selected, if you will?
Yeah, so all of that would be so to answer the second question first, that's something that is a better answer. It's a better question for the B protocol devs to answer, and we've thought about we've chatted about having them over to come to a community call or something where we can all ask some of these questions. So it's my understanding is because this is these are all risk things, that it's the lowest risk yield that can gain acceptable APY to incentivize liquidity to come and sit in the backstop. So and wherever that is. In terms of who bears the cost for the various transaction fees and stuff to do this, my understanding again is that it's going to, I would say LPs, but the LPs are also taking in the liquidation incentive from the protocol on the initial liquidation. So I would say that it's likely covered by the liquidation incentive, and then they additionally will receive profits through fees during the rebalancing process, or in our case, kickbacks, their portion of the coordinator bid, stuff like that, and be redeposited. But that's a question that I'm sure that the B protocol guys would love to dork out on, so we can have them on to do a community call and go over all those details. Good question.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I guess at some point there's some edge case where like the cost of these transactions in order to use the liquidity starts to be comparable to the the profit from the liquidations, and so maybe like on a day when there's right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's definitely cases in which depositors are losing money in the sense that their unprofitable liquidations do occur. It's more of an expectation. On average, if you repeat this process many times, it's profitable. It's profitable, and so part of the reason there's yield is to compensate for that, and that's part of the reason you also have the fees are also there. So everything's kind of set up to make it attractive to liquidity providers, because that's the key problem with these backstops, is that it's opportunity cost. You have to overcome opportunity cost because liquidations occur, like really large profitable liquidations occur sort of rarely, kind of at random, So one of the things that we're offering and doing this by making these small and medium-sized liquidations more efficient is to say, we're going to kind of pad your margins because sometimes these will just sit there and not be executed because they're just not, they don't meet the threshold for being profitable. And so by giving us this special lane, we can kind of make sure that the market's more profitable and that capital is being recycled better, and that they're able to internalize more of that arbitrage, and that helps smooth out this profit, so that in expectation they're much more likely to be profitable sooner. It helps with the capital stickiness, or the LP stickiness, I guess. So yeah.
Got it. Great. That's a really helpful answer. Thank you.
Yeah, happy to have you step up and ask. Thanks for hopping up. Do we have anyone else on this topic before we move on to the next one? I'll give you a last second here. Oh, Neurosift, I'm calling you up right here. Why don't you go on ahead?
Hey, how's it going? I had a quick question, which is there any combined offering that B Protocol is going to be able to unlock revenue from, for like insurance or other use cases where we would want to make sure that we could get some of the cash flow as well? Kind of like your protocol recycles and captures all of its own liquidation flow and value.
So by this you mean B protocol offering a first-party protocol or a first-party product through B protocol, or something we can?
Yeah, that like takes advantage of the fact that they're capturing and recycling all of the MEV flow via KeeperDAO.
Yeah, yeah, certainly possible. I mean, again, this is just like the first baby step we're taking together. We think that it didn't take this wasn't like super long in the making. Like, this was quite easy for us to kind of come to terms on. I mean, in a matter of weeks, because we have sort of an attractive proposition, and the way their technology set up is also very attractive to us. But as this goes on, if this is something, and this is something we feel, I'll say in general, is that the properties of this coordination are very attractive and unlock a lot of different possibilities for protocols that are no longer, that haven't really been things they could explore before. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if there were things, once they kind of get used to this and start thinking about it, if there were new things that they could think to build with this or to use this for. And one big sort of unanswered question in general is, now that you're recycling some of this, what do you do with it? What do you do with it? Like for them, that's for them to answer. I mean, the easy answer is, it goes to the LPs. And there may be more interesting answers there, though. And there could be synergies where we allow them to do things with that rebate that can kind of compound their possibilities, right? And that's kind of where maybe the future, some of the future is, in us offering those sorts of things. So yeah, I mean, yeah, the future is wide open. So yeah, we're just getting started.
Great, thanks.
All right, cool. Well, why don't we move on to the second topic I had, which was something that's been resurfacing pretty regularly in the chats and on the comments on the forum too. What was looking at that buyback, where I know that folks wanted to look into revisiting that conversation. I even saw a couple comments from Hedgehog saying, maybe we should lower the target amount, as well as put some pretty strict parameters on price around it as well. So we'd love to just open this conversation back up to the group as well. So if you've got thoughts about the buyback proposal, or changes you want to make to it, why don't you go on ahead and raise? And we got Peso coming up first.
I'm sort of indifferent, to be honest, at this point. I'm beaten and bruised by this price action, but I will say one thing. I'm swing trading the shit out of that green candle. So I'm sure other people will, so be mindful of the parameters you put on that, because if we see a 50% candle in a day because we bought 30 million in one go, a lot of people are going to be swing trading that. That is all. But I support it, I guess, technically. No, I don't really support it. I'm not a fan of buybacks ever, to be honest, so I don't really support it. But maybe other people can convince me otherwise.
Priest, you got something for us?
Yeah, I think just to preface this, I think I generally agree with Peso's sentiment that buybacks are not the best capital use, as we've seen just yesterday with Spell's Merlin candle that got immediately retraced. It was like a 50% candle that completely got destroyed in the span of 10 minutes. But I think considering that Keeper...
I think you muted yourself there, Priest.
Yeah, sorry, my bad. Just looking at I'm not actually sure if the metrics are accurate, but on CoinGecko, we're currently trading at a $78 million market cap, whereas our treasury is at 89 million. So we're trading roughly 15-20% below our treasury net asset value. So I think generally, if we ever gonna do a buyback, now is the time to do it, especially if we do have news to follow up on that price action. So I think obviously that depends on when the process of CG will start. But I think if it's imminent, then it would make sense to start initiating again a $3 to $5 million buyback. If that's not really close, I think even though we're trading below NAV, it doesn't make much sense because, as Peter said, it would probably just get retraced. So I think it really depends on the timeline again.
Okay. All right. Thanks for the input there. Does anyone else have?
Go
ahead.
Add on that. Has there been an updated timeline? Let's take a rough guideline for when some more CG info would go live, because that would be probably, in my opinion, pretty important information in order to gauge whether or not a buyback at this point is a good decision.
So what you're basically saying is that if a buyback were to occur, it should occur prior to that information, or to coordination game being live. Yeah,
I think you have to before public announcement, definitely. But I think currently the people in this call are probably we're not gonna be able to front run that candle up to whatever 15% parity. So it's, I think, obviously an internal decision, but yeah, I would use that as my guiding principle. If there's news to follow up that candle, I would be in favor of it. If not, I think again it would probably be just run back.
Breeze?
Hey, I think for the most part, when we've had buybacks in the past, I think whoever's been initiating them has done a pretty good job of not printing like a really big candle for the most part. So instead, would we have the chance to have like a limit order instead of like a specific candle buy? Like, would anyone be up for that instead, or is that like not in question at all?
Can you clarify that a little bit? Sorry.
Sorry, so just having a limit order instead of a complete buyback.
Okay,
A
so
limit.
establishing what you would consider like a price floor.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't
All
have the
right.
Peso, go
So
ahead.
if a tree falls in the woods and doesn't make a sound, did it even fall? If we buy back and we don't print a green candle, what the fuck was the point of the buyback? We just made our liquidity even thinner for investor onboarding. Yeah, that's my 2 cents at least. I sort of, if we're going to spend $5 million or $4 million on buybacks, we better be printing some green candles, boys, or else we just wasted $5 million to acquire X amount of Rook, and now our treasury is even more correlated with token price, and we have nothing to show for it in terms of market conditions.
I just want to stress that green candles can be a side effect of buybacks. Typically, the green candles you want are by people front running, to increase your price or maybe yours, but ideally you're not printing a huge green candle. I think the primary focus of why you would do a buyback is because you've issued that token at a higher valuation, and it's now sort of outstanding sort of debt in a sense. And by removing it at a lower valuation, you've essentially closed a trade, if you want to think about it that way, in profit, right? We have more in our treasury than that outstanding token that we're buying back. And then it lets us sort of use those tokens again in the future if their valuation were to change, right? So CG's launched, everything is successful. There's a re-rating of the price of this token. We now have much more, right? So of course, that you mentioned, additional convexity by taking on, more Rook. Totally in agreement with that. That's why I guess it's a little bit complicated, but yeah, like what we print in the market or on the chart, I would worry about less than sort of more of a sort of a treasury level decision, I guess, about circulating supply and tokens and emissions and all of that. But
I think I would slightly push back on that point. I think especially now that it looks like general price action in the market has been pretty depressed recently, and I think now is a pretty good time to start constructing some narratives for whatever market environment we're going to be in the future. So Rook has a great bear market narrative because even in a bear market, MEV will exist and keepers will still be profitable. So if we're able to release the coordination game and gain attention of people by pumping Rook essentially, because there's currently nothing pumping. So if we're the only coin pumping, we're gonna get the entire attention of CT. So I think like the RR of just constructing a successful narrative now is probably more correlated to the size of the green candle than just executing most efficiently, if that makes sense. So I think it wouldn't really be a bad idea to actually try to execute inefficiently in order to cause anticipation.
Yeah. I don't think that the green candle would be wrong. I mean, it's the least we could do. But I think all I'm trying to say is that wouldn't necessarily be the only point from a balance sheet perspective. And if it would need to be followed up with something, right, to support our conviction that it's undervalued. I mean,
of course,
the treasury NAV thing, sure, but you can't actually arb that. So.
Isn't like so? Aren't the two options with any company to provide return to investors, buybacks or dividends? Those are like dividends or yield. Or you call it yield in crypto and you call it dividends in the trad markets. But if those are the only two options, the way I see it is buybacks reward people who have already been looking for exit liquidity. You could look at Spell and their smooth brain attempt to just buy back all on one candle. I'm sure we would do that if we were Rook buying back. I hope we have some people smarter than that. But you're giving an opportunity to people who just want exit liquidity, and then they can dump, and they're like, oh, I dodged a bullet with that coin over there. And if you don't, what Crypto Priest is saying is that you do need a company the buybacks with some sort of underlying narrative here about we are buying back because as a DAO we are bullish rather than we're trying to just pump our own bags and produce a green candle. I don't really think that works because the green candle is just then followed up by red candles, and then you kind of just eliminate what you were talking about. But on the other end is giving a yield and giving a dividend, which is difficult to do because of it's hard to forecast revenue moving forward, and it's also hard to forecast what Coordination Game will do to the revenue of KeeperDAO going forward. But giving a yield and giving a dividend rewards more long-term investors because the more yield you get is determined by how long you're in the coin. So it produces holders rather than dumpers. So when possible, I am more of a fan of giving a yield as opposed to a buyback. I think they might produce some similar kind of returns, but in a different way and to different people. But I haven't researched the issue so deeply about the effectiveness of buybacks. I'm really unsure, and I do have an open mind with the issue because price action has been shitty, and we're all not so happy with it. So.
Alcap, you got something to share? You hopped on stage.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. Hey guys, as Messi said a long time ago, one of the best ways to make people look at KeeperDAO, especially that we are going to launch our top product, is to print a fucking large green candle. But that's definitely not gonna be enough. I mean, it's gonna definitely be exit liquidity for a few people, but if we do the marketing right, which means, okay, don't spend $5 million, spend $4 million and invest $100,000 in YouTube videos, Medium posts, Cointelegraph articles. I mean, we don't only have to focus on the buyback, we also need to focus on advertising the product itself, because it's pretty much our one last chance to create enough hype to reverse the trend. Because after the people find out about KeeperDAO, I doubt they are going to come buy the token and sell it in loss like 2 weeks later. They are going to keep accumulating overall, if they have a reason to. But that's come with the staking and the rest of the stuff.
Hey everybody, I just wanted to kind of chime in on my thought as kind of the original author. So, when I originally posted that, I obviously thought that Rook was undervalued, but really the big intention was it to not to have a big green candlestick by any means. It's really just about putting our destiny in our own hands to some degree. I think we, especially the team, kind of knows what's coming, and we kind of have insider alpha that the overall market doesn't per se. And so by giving us this asset that we know are almost a fact, there's market conditions that can always impact it, but we're confident that the market is going to see what we're doing and it's going to like it, and at that point in time, Rook is going to be valued at a much greater premium than it is now. And so instead of us maybe not being able to acquire more Rook to pay contributors to disperse amongst grant recipients that we feel are really contributing, because it's just so highly valued at that time, we have inflows obviously, but it's really just giving us that asset that we feel is going to be really, really valuable, and giving us control over it versus other market forces. And investing in maybe a CVX, it all comes back to opportunity cost. Can we put that money in something else? is that asset going to get a better return? Is it going to be as predictable than something we control? Probably not. And so that's really kind of the fundamental reason why I posted that. And so, there's more information that I know we're hopefully solidifying over the coming days around comp and how that impacts the amount of Rook that will kind of be, dispersed over time. So once we have more information that, I'm much more confident to kind of push this buyback forward potentially. But again, these are just my thoughts on just basically putting control in our own hands versus external forces to some degree.
Let's see. Scamter, you have a request to speak? Trying to figure out how to work this. Dietz is away. Go for it.
Sorry, I just wanted to agree with Maddie here. I also thought that the idea or the purpose behind the proposal was it was for the benefit of the Treasury in the sense that Rook is, I think we'd all agree that Rook is heavily undervalued here. And we think that with everything, all the catalysts that are coming up, it's going to be like the Bitcoin or the ETH or whatever it is that we use to buy back the Rook. We think that's the Rook is going to perform much better than whatever it's sitting in right now. So I think, if we're doing it for that reason, I don't think it really matters as much whether there's a big green candle that's printed or all the other things related to that.
I would push back on that a little bit because obviously Rook at the current value is, in all of our opinions, undervalued. But I think if we're going to do a buyback, we might as well extract additional value from that buyback besides simply buying an undervalued asset. So if we can use the buyback to, first of all, acquire more Rook, which we obviously believe is undervalued, and kind of put our treasury in a better position, that's great. But I think if we can also use that for secondary purpose, it's again mentioned by constructing a narrative around Rook, like releasing it with, as Cappuccino mentioned, advertisements, more marketing. It's like a general laid out vision why we believe that Rook at the moment is undervalued, why we believe where we're going to go in the future, and why we're able to kind of remain profitable as a DAO under any market conditions. So I think it doesn't have to be a black or white view. I think you can have a more nuanced interpretation of what the buyback is for. So I generally don't look at it simply as an investment. I think it gives us a lot more opportunities and actually in order to frame a narrative around that can kind of propel engagement and adoption forward.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what you're saying there. And I think Hazard also mentioned this in the, maybe it was in the general chat, that we should kind of structure the buyback so that it happens close to or in sync with the coordination game so that we kind of have all those things going for Rook. But I definitely agree with that.
This may be controversial, but maybe not at the same time. I think talking about green candlesticks is great. It brings optics to the project, which is critical. But in the end, we really just need to really instill a culture of long-term thinking. And if people and investors can't kind of get on board with that, then they're probably not the right fit for the project. And I know that's controversial. I know it impacts the price of Rook, and impacts a lot of different things. But I think it's a risk worth taking because that's the only way we're going to survive in a world where your code can get forked anytime. Your community members can leave on a dime. And so making sure that we have the right people here for the right purposes is so critical in my mind. And so, I think, again, putting things in our control is the priority here.
I completely agree. In a world where everything is open source and like the community contributors can go anywhere, being able to retain and kind of get talent is one of the most critical aspects of the success of a DAO. But you have to kind of acknowledge that you need visibility in order to get that, first of all, hiring, second of all, partnerships with other DAOs. Like look at Dopex. How many partnerships have they closed since Dopex has ballooned in price? Like a green candle brings visibility to the product, brings integrations, the partnerships. So I think just looking Like just saying that we just should focus on long term, just build the tech, and everything will work itself out. I think it's a bit of an optimistic perspective of how the crypto market currently works. Like it's a very attention based market. So
I think that's a very reactive view. But we are proactive. We want to be proactive people. We are the people that are going out and finding order flow. We are finding ways to capture value in the market. We don't wait for opportunity to kind of come to us. Like, you know, investors come to us. We're not relying on people to come to our protocol and do some swap feature, right? We are proactively going out there and forcing ourselves into the infrastructure of the ecosystem. And if we can build up enough moat, like if Amazon, you know, it's kind of a US centric view, but you know, the longest time they just train their investors to realize that they're thinking for the long term, they're going to keep spending, and they're going to do what they can to build a moat. And by the time that everybody else realized what they have built and what kind of moat that they had, it's too late. They've already kind of destroyed their competition. And I see this kind of being a similar parallel to where, you know, we may lose out on some investors and some optics near term, but by the time everybody realizes what we've built and the integration partners and the moats that we've kind of accomplished, you know, that's kind of where we want to be. I think that's kind of the best situation in my mind. But, you know, again, I understand that it's always a balance of near-term optics and getting awareness. And it's a fine line, but, you know, I think we always try to sway more on the side of the long term, which I think, you know, you agreed with, so.
Yeah, I agree with the sentiment. Just I have a slight disagreement. Like, if you're currently a builder in crypto, a new builder, what do you think the likelihood is that you've heard of KeeperDAO or what the coordination game actually is? Like, of all the new builders in crypto, how many have heard of the coordination game, and how many are looking at potential integrations or thinking about how they can actually integrate the product into our ecosystem? Like, obviously, being reactive or proactive instead of reactive makes sense, but why not do both at the same time? Like, if we get a lot of good optics and a lot of attention, people actually will like try and build around us. Like, they are same with the Convex Wars. Like, you'll actually create ecosystems based around your product itself, which is, I think, a far bigger moat than anything else can really provide us.
Maybe we are sort of not so much in disagreement as, you know, maybe differences in emphasis. Like, I think all of the above are things that can happen from a buyback and be reasons for a buyback, whatever the reason. If you do the same thing, it's mostly like, are you following through? I don't think we would want to just buy back a bunch of Rook and kind of, you know, tune out for a few weeks. Like, it would be similar to how Yearn recently executed theirs, you know, sort of a part of a coordinated marketing spectrum effort kind of a thing. You know, reasons would be given and things, rather than just kind of quietly buying back like maybe we've done in the past. So whether or not that produces the intended effect in the chart, I think the reality would be that maybe the people that care about price and the people that care about conviction and care about whatever, maybe that will get their attention. And then the other materials and things can get more attention and more attention.
Yeah, I agree. I think it has to be a fine balance between both of those long-term versus short-term versus medium-term views. I just think like the general sentiment of build and they will come has obviously not worked out great for us, and I don't think it's an accurate representation of how the market currently works.
Well,
can it work
I mean,
like that
to
in the
be,
future? I think yeah.
if I could maybe modify that, like we actually, I think our main problem has been build and don't release a product and they will come. And that doesn't work, right? So we've been building but not releasing and maybe not productizing. And if you don't do that, then nobody's gonna come to do shit. So I think that's the corner we're turning and focused on turning. And so it's possible that if we had built in a more iterative way or in a more, technology is its own marketing as well. And, you know, you can do things with it, but I think the sort of the double kiss here of death has been, you know, building an obscure, complicated thing that maybe is valuable, but then, you know, also not, it's obscure, but it's also kind of not released. It's not productized. You can't use it, so you can't talk about it to your friends or to other people or something. And so I think that's sort of the been the big problem. I don't want to, and building anything isn't wrong, but building and not releasing is sort of, you're playing with fire.
Definitely agreed. Yeah, that's a more nuanced, like a better phrasing of what I meant to say.
And one last thing I just want to say is, kind of along the same lines of putting the asset in our hand and really kind of giving it to the people we feel like we want to be in the ecosystem. Like, and kind of along the same lines of proactivity, we want to mobilize you guys in the community to be those integration scouts, to really be this force for awareness and to get paid for that. And so instead of giving you guys an asset like ETH or USDC, where longer term it doesn't align our interest, this gives us the capabilities to really align our interests with people that we are going to hopefully have go out there and be those scouts and proactive people that are screaming our name in every corner that they can, which I can tell there's so much passion as it is now. So last thing I just want to say about that.
Awesome. Well, hey, we are coming up right to the top of the hour here. Let's see here. Tommy, did I see that you had a little update that you wanted to share with this community as well? Possibly. Let's see here. Maybe I'm misreading a chat. Oh, Tommy, hey.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Bonjour.
Hey guys. Yeah, so we have our job board live. I'll post it in the voice chat. So take a look if you want to come work for us. This is your chance. That's really it. More jobs and grants will be added to it. If you want to propose a grant or like a part-time job or whatever, there's an opportunity for you to do there as well. So take a look.
Awesome.
Way to sell it, Tommy. So, I'm going to expand slightly. I'm going to expand just a little slight addition and say that, the coordination game launch, there's a lot of different arms that need to be coordinated. A big one is sort of, the beginning of what you're beginning to see with the B protocol thing is the start of one arm, which is integrations, not just of like, oh, we have limit orders on our decks now that nobody uses, or something like that, but integrations of sort of native transaction flow that we can build mechanisms, and we are actively building mechanisms for that will direct it through our system. So protocol level value adds to capture transaction flow across the chain, across different chains. The second one is product improvements for our first party products, as well as enabling others with their own products to direct users through our system. So making our first party stuff, the trading interface, all of that better, easier to use so that people can swap there when they want to in a more simple way that looks like what they're used to. And another big factor is, reorganization, how we do our work and how we structure and interface with governance and stuff is changing. You've seen some of that lately. And then another focus here, which is what Tommy's starting to kind of show you some, is talent focus. So focus on when we're operating, like who are we operating with, who are we onboarding, what kind of a team are we building, because we want to build sort of the ultimate, high performing, efficient, low overhead team of really experts who can go after this technology and this market and just lock it down. And there's sort of a long tail of tons of stuff that community members can get involved with. We've had so many great people coming out of the community already, including me and most of the people in labs and on the team today, that we're just excited to want to do that. And you've seen recently some of our sort of onboardings that we've been announcing over Twitter, and this jobs board is part of a sort of a new opening of a new campaign similar around the coordination game launch to kind of start sucking up talent and stocking this team with what they need to, really drive top line revenue, capture this complicated market, and just drive a ton of revenue through the coordination game to the DAO, to the stakers, and everybody else. So loading up on that talent is sort of the start of that, is what you're seeing here. And this is part of, kind of what Crypto Priest, what you said, like this all needs to be coordinated. We need to be reaching out and taking these opportunities to secure long-term advantages that we can use, as we're going along. And so this is part of the beginning of that. So some of the kind of prestige onboardings with some of these really high-profile keepers in the last few days, as well as like the real prestige onboardings, which were Pangolin and Matt here, right? But seeing more of these is something we're hoping to do, and this jobs board is sort of part of our kind of initial start of sort of maybe slowly starting to staff up, because we kind of view that as the real mode. That's kind of the all-terrain vehicle that will let us adapt and capture and ship just a fuck ton of like really advanced products that are driving an insane amount of revenue. Is just getting the right people in the right places. So that can mean a lot of things. There's all kinds of different roles in this job board already. There'll be more, but it's really exciting and a big thing we're going to start communicating about and talking about. So take a look. It's pretty cool.
Awesome. Well, hey, thanks to the two of you guys for teeing that up. I think it's super excited. Can't wait to see the interest in applicants we get when this gets shared a little bit wider. Wanted to get it in front of this community first. There's been a lot of people that have put in effort and good research and thoughts and proposals in front of us, and so wanted you guys to get a first crack at looking at these opportunities and applying for them as well. And before we kind of hit the public with that, like I hinted at on the tally call as well. But yeah, this is really exciting, really cool stuff. We've just surpassed the hour here. Peso, looks like you've got a last thought to share with us. I'll call you on up. Here you go, Pace.
From the bottom of my heart, I'm wondering why I have to go in a tally community call to find out you guys are working on instant fills. Why can't our Discord be the mecca of KeeperDAO information? Why do I have to go in Olympus DAO's Discord to hear Hazard talk about KeeperDAO? Why can't we just have our Discord be the place where questions are answered and information is free flowing? That's my honest to God question. I was kind of tilted by that. Not even gonna lie. I was tilted during the Olympus one when Hazard was like, our community's patient, and I was like, no, we're not. But now I was like, why is the tally call where you guys reveal instant fills? That's my question. That is all.
Well, we have been talking about instant fills here and answering questions for like 2 months about it. So this, is something that we've been working on. We hadn't talked with their community about it, but I do understand that you guys have very consistently asked for a different way for communication to get shared around here, and that feedback's not falling on deaf ears. I get it. I feel your frustration. I hear you guys, and that's we're hiring up to do a better job to service you guys better and make sure that you guys feel like you're getting the information that you need, and that's really what I can say, at least on the top of my head, about that.
And I just kind of want to piggyback off of that, more from just like a higher level feedback standpoint. One thing I really want to emphasize moving forward is getting feedback from the community, getting their input, getting soft consensus on how we should move forward. I'm definitely going to be leveraging polls more and more. And, I want you guys to reach out to me, whoever you feel comfortable talking to. If you have something you'd want to see as a poll, you want to see something that you just want to see what the community feels like. I know this isn't specifically about like in-depth conversations like what we were just talking about. But anything that you want to see kind of discussed or known or just kind of see consensus around, let us know. It's definitely gonna be an integral part of what I want to do moving forward.
Priest, I'm going to call you up for a last comment here.
Thanks. Yeah. Just a very quick question regarding the open roles. Are the salaries not accurate? Like, will they pay 250 grand for a community manager? Yeah, because I feel like that's a little high.
So that is a range that includes vesting compensation as well. So
Gotcha. Okay.
So that's not like 250K in cash, and that's also the very top of the range. Someone would have to, pretty much blow us completely out of their water with their aptitude and their knowledge and their ability to receive that top of that range too.
I mean, if you're plugged into sort of DAO Twitter, I guess, there are some very high profile community anchors at some DAOs that are focused on stuff, and they're on every podcast, and they're out there flogging their organizational structure, or somebody like Tracheopteryx at Yearn, they're spinning off new protocols and doing things. And for somebody of that caliber who is going to land at the top of that range, they're worth that. But if it's just sort of somebody who's kind of around, I don't know, saying hi and stuff like that's different. So yeah,
makes a
the
lot of
range
sense.
reflects that.
Yeah, I'm glad to see that we're compensating our team a lot more fairly. Especially for Solidity engineers, because I've just heard at least that there's been some issues with that. So glad to see that change.
Yeah, I mean, just as a note, because there is a link to compensation or contributor incentives in that doc, I think. Tommy, is that right?
Yeah, there's one in each job description.
Yeah, so there's a more complete picture. Yeah, there's a more complete picture of sort of how we're starting to think about philosophy about incentives and how we structure incentives for building a high performance team. And that's there's a lot of intentional decisions we have to make about what kind of a team, what kind of organization do you want to build, and that all gets boiled down into these incentives and compensation. And so, higher numbers come with higher performance demands, and more selectivity and more need for transparency and accountability. Take a look at it. There's a lot of interesting stuff there. Don't just kind of look at, you can look at the numbers, but, really dig in and check out some of the things that were thought through for this, because the labor market, if you want to call it labor, I don't know, the contributor market right now is it's really difficult to get high-end talent. Like, a lot of it's just out of reach. And so you have to look at a lot of translational talent coming from big tech, coming from finance, fintech, or maybe coming out of school. Maybe they're working for themselves, doing trading or automated stuff. And so you have to really go hunt in those forests to find the right people. So yeah, it's challenging. It's quite interesting. So we had to kind of build around that in a way.
Yeah, just to get one quick last dig in there, I think what would help out with that is if we're a little, like, if we have more visibility. I feel like we would be more successful at hiring talent, because that would kind of draw talent to us as well.
And this is sort of part of this is intended to be a part of a transparent, like a beacon that this is how much we pay. These are the people who work with us. I think a concept we've discussed is sort of talent worthiness. Like, you want your org, KeeperDAO, to be sort of worthy of somebody's talent, so that when you make them an offer, when Paradigm makes an offer, most people aren't going to be like, well, I don't know, I need to read about the doc. I need to read the docs. It's like, oh yeah, I'll join Paradigm, because Paradigm has created a culture that is talent worthy. It's worthy of their time and talent to go work there. And similarly, that's what we have to do. It's as simple as that. So part of the intention of these guidelines that are embedded in this hiring and this jobs board that you can find by clicking links through there is to start laying the foundations for that, because it's really important when you want top flight talent that you're giving them a deal, that you're giving them the gift of other top flight talent to work with, and you're creating a place where they can sort of build new things, succeed, and be rewarded for that. And like you said, that's not where we are. That's not where we were yesterday. We're getting better. I think some of the research partner onboardings have helped my conversations a lot, and we'll see more of that, I think.
For sure, completely agree. And looking forward to seeing the direction we're going in. It definitely looks a lot more bright than where we've come from.
Alcap, why don't you unmute and share your thoughts?
Yeah, I just have a few suggestions. Would be really nice if after each of this call we have concrete actions. Like, all right, everyone is sharing here their ideas. Would be really nice at the end of the call to have concrete actions. Like, okay, we got these suggestions. We are going to do this and that. I just don't want to just don't think that we should close the town hall without anything on the table like we usually do, because we keep discussing some stuff over and over again about marketing and still nothing happens. Just my 2 cents, sorry.
So when you say, concrete actions after this, I agree that people want to see things taking definitive steps somewhere. I would think that for us, it still goes through our process. So I mean, if you wanted that concrete step to be, hey, we talked about it and it's now been sent to the SOFONs, as long as we're following our governance process, we can build that in. But I think that it's not like we can skip governance steps to say put something immediately to a vote after this call.
No, definitely not. But SOFONs are missing like 4 weeks. They are always busy with something else, and it's quite annoying. Like, I know they are hardworking, but they should have like 10 minutes to check proposals, edit them based on the feedback the community has. Yeah, so just respect the organization, but let's move.
Yeah,
we are moving. Like, I know it's not great with the price action and stuff, but it's not exactly like we're sitting still,
All right. Hazard, any last thoughts here before we sign off?
I think Al made a great suggestion that some of my tweets should be coming out of KeeperDAO's mouth. So I can do that. It's not a very fancy, concrete outcome, but I'm going to make sure that happens going forward. How about that?
Love it. Cool. All right. Well, hey, why don't we go on ahead? I'm going to sign us off for the day. Appreciate everybody stepping up, hopping into the call, sharing their thoughts. Please do take a look at those open opportunities and read through them. A lot of time and effort and thought was put into them by Tommy and Hazard, Watts, Matt. So many people helped out creating this, and so we're very excited for this next stage to be rolling forward as well. And so yeah, that'll be my little call to action for the weekend there. And so, hey, again, thanks everybody for joining us. It's been another great town hall. Appreciate you all coming. And we'll talk again soon. Thanks everybody. I'm going to go on ahead and end this now.